One thing I found super interesting on my AI journey is how many people still push back on any concept or any idea that AI can actually do things for you. The reality is, we already know from years of usage where capability has improved, from the benchmarks which are increasingly saturated, and from the real world results that a lot of companies are getting, that AI is just getting better and better every few months. One of the challenges is that because 2 or 3 years ago it wasn't that good, it made lots of mistakes, hallucinated a bit, maybe it embarrassed you when you relied on it for something. A lot of people have this negative sentiment towards it, and they don't use AI enough at a level of sophistication to be able to assess how its capability has actually increased. What this means is sometimes these people sit in decision-making roles and they're operating off outdated information. This is a real problem, especially if you're a business owner. That's because your competitors and AI-first startups in your industry will be pushing AI to the absolute limit. They're going to be using the AI coding tools. They're going to be using AI agents to help them run their business better, faster, and cheaper. And in the long run, they're going to outcompete you, because the point of differentiation that a lot of businesses have are 2 things: relationships with customers and stakeholders, and unique IP that hasn't found its way onto the internet. If you don't have either of those things, if you're operating in a commodity type business that is easily replicable, you're at a lot of risk. And that's why I keep writing about this idea and talking about in my videos, this idea that everyone needs to become a little more technical because of AI, especially if you've relied on people who report into you to do more technical things for you over the years. Maybe you had a person who did the complex spreadsheets or the Power BI dashboards or did all of the coding. You don't need to become a software developer to win in the AI era, but you absolutely need to have much more hands-on technical knowledge of how this technology works. The reason is you need to know what the failure points are, so you can fold that into your governance and make sure that you've got controls in place to protect you and your business from getting accused of using AI recklessly or not having enough testing and quality in the process. You need to have a decent idea of who the different vendors are and the trade-offs between closed source models and open weight models. One of the more interesting things over the last few months has been the catching up of the Chinese open weight models and their ability to deliver really good value for money when you look at it through the lens of cost per task. There's also been the release of models from Grok and Muse Spark, which mean, especially for US companies and Western companies, there's a lot more price and quality competition. Even the release of models like Gemini 3.6 Flash mean that there are affordable, fast, good value for money AI models available today. If all of that was gobbledygook to you, my argument is that you've got a knowledge issue. That's because you probably have people reporting into you and salespeople telling you that Anthropic and OpenAI are the only game in town and you need to pay for the most intelligence, the most expensive model, the best. That's going to be a fatal mistake, because if you take a step back and think about your operating model, it's made up of all of these tasks and interactions of varying levels of complexity. Some are simple, some are complex. Some flows you need 1 or 2 people to coordinate. Other times, dozens of people are coordinating. Think about complex production processes, for example. If you have a lot of these workflows running on AI agents, the cost per run of that workflow can add up very quickly. If you are not across the technical details yourself, you will get sold a more expensive solution than is probably required. Your Anthropic or OpenAI salesperson will love you because you're just going to spend millions of dollars a month on API credits, and it's going to go up and up and up. You'll also face lock-in risk, where because you're not experimenting with more and more models out there on the market, your team won't have that muscle for testing the cost efficiency of everything they're doing with AI in the business. Increasingly, general management of companies is going to evolve to be much more technical, because over time, as AI agents get good enough, you're going to collapse whole teams into AI agents. Already, a lot of leaders who heavily use AI report that they enjoy working with their AI agents more than some of their direct reports, and they get more accessible output from them. An example might be chatting naturally to an AI tool to get questions about finance questions instead of asking the CFO who wants to spend a week to put a 45-page PowerPoint together. The reality is that how we work is going to evolve as well. And the more technical you become, the more you're going to identify opportunities to collapse boundaries between functions and remove friction and blockers. One of the biggest complaints a lot of leaders have, and I've heard this so many times throughout my career, is that gap between their vision of how they want their business business to work and how it actually works once that vision is translated into what their direct reports and team members operationalize it as. There's almost always a gap, and the amount of complexity in some businesses means that leaders are never going to get the time to get to certain levels of detail on absolutely everything. What AI actually changes in this conversation is leaders have an opportunity now to better curate the business working in the way that they actually want it to work through taking advantage of the leverage of AI tools. And this is a very different thing. It's new because instead of always relying on the human experts, for some things you can already take advantage of AI agents to help you. So if you're a leader or a business owner and you still feel like you don't know enough about how AI works or how you want to apply it to your business, that's something I write about in my newsletter on Substack. It's called Getting AI to Work. The link to subscribe is in the description below. What I do is try and take the lessons of change management, apply them to the AI era, and share some insights about different ways of thinking that take you out of the cookie cutter consulting firm approach to this and get you thinking about how do you actually want to change your operating model. If you started from a blank whiteboard today, how do you take advantage of the technology to build the business that you've actually wanted to build for a very long time? Let me know in the comments what you think. Hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.